Good morning, Cynthia.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
Good to see you again. And I'm excited to welcome our viewers, our followers, to another edition of Thursday's Culture Talk. We are kicking off this week an exciting new series. It's been dubbed the Roadmap series, and this is the first.
That's a good, summer topic, kind of, right? Like road
Right?
trip.
We're on the road again, right? So we are on the road again here at Culture Talk, and over the next few weeks, we are going to be bringing a number of topics around culture that focus on the idea of how do you use culture as a tangible business asset and something that can drive outcomes and results for both your team and the people who are most important to you, as well as your organization and the important goals that you are always have top of mind and that you're driving toward. So we're on a drive, we're following a roadmap. Today, we're going to kick off by talking about one really important component of culture, and that is leadership development. And what opportunities exist in culture to really help us drive outcomes and positive impacts through our leaders.
And what's the connection between leaders and culture? I think we'll get to that as we move forward.
Right. So before we dive in, if you are new to our conversation, we are the co-founders of Culture Talk. My name is Teresa Agresta, and I am located here in Saratoga Springs, New York. And my partner in crime over there is Cynthia Forrestman, who's in Denver today. She's been on the road a little bit herself this week, but right now she's back in Denver.
Back in Denver.
Yeah. So leadership development, I think, is a core component to the employee experience, at least it should be. And we are developing leaders, whether we're consciously doing it or not. So the messages that we're giving them through our cultural cues, through the way that organizational leaders are reaching out and cultivating and mentoring staff that's coming up, and even the ways that we as senior leaders are behaving and,
Absolutely.
Pulling that red thread through to the management of the organization. Each of those steps can be taken apart and looked at through the lens of leadership development. And what we would like to focus on today is, how does the mechanism of Archetype and the tools we've developed at Culture Talk enhance that process? How can the storytelling framework that enables us to quickly get in touch with the core of who we are and what's important to us and what motivates us, how can that help the organization if we understand that and help our employees to connect the dots between the way that they're showing up and the way that they're driving results for their own team members and the people that they're leading, as well as how do they use it as a tool to enhance their career success and move up.
I just want to make an added point here, and that is that there is such richness in the framework of story that's just already built in, right? It tells me how I see the world. It tells me what I'm good at, what people appreciate. It helps me understand what's the unique motivational driver for why I do what I do. And it also shines a light on maybe what I'm not good at, or maybe things that are in my way. We call them shadow traits when we talk about archetype. And all of those different components become opportunities to develop leaders.
Right, exactly. And I think that if you ignore the blind spots, like you were talking about, then all the good intention in the world isn't going to sort of get you over some of the lumps that are in the way. So, sometimes people, break down the stages of leadership development. Are we talking about new leaders that are just beginning to move out of a more tactical role and begin to think more strategically? Are they leading themselves? Are they leading a group of people? Other times we're looking at senior leaders who are really needing to step back up to a much higher level and look at strategy. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit for tactics and ideas that are, applicable across the board, and those that might be better served toward one side of that equation or the other. But I think that if we start with self-awareness, it's a pretty well recognized component of leadership. And I think it's important that we're constantly developing self-awareness, constantly understanding where have I come from and what has shaped and formed me, and am I able to continue growing? Am I able to continue evaluating?
Right? Where do I even want to go and grow?
Right, exactly. So we're on our roadmap in leadership development. What's my point A? What's that measurement? So Cynthia, maybe you can share a little bit about the CultureTalk solution for self-awareness.
Yeah, so as we mentioned already, the archetypes are stories, and we each have the capacity for many different stories. We use a framework of 12 at CultureTalk. But one of the first things we do, a foundational aspect of a leadership development program, is to measure which of those 12 storylines are most prominent in somebody's experience. And we walk them through a validation experience where we say, hey, this is how you measured. These are the stories that we measured that you scored high on or you scored low on. How does that feel? How does that fit with your personal experience? Can you line up the patterns with things that have happened in your personal professional life? And how do they come to life uniquely in your experience? And so we call that a validation experience, and is the foundational piece of leadership development that I get really clear on. For me, my stories are really guided by the creator archetype, the caregiver archetype, the lover archetype. Those are three patterns that are very strong in my life. And so starting from there, one of the things that we can begin to do in developing leaders, we know that like personal branding, for example, is a really important component today to professional life. We are all developing a personal brand in the way we show up online, in the way we show up in networking. And it can be a really uncomfortable experience for people to try to talk about themselves, right? People tend to like, well, I don't want to say it, like some people have a hesitancy to really put themselves out there because they feel just uncomfortable or lack a certain amount of confidence. Well, think about applying story to brand and developing a personal brand where you can go, hey, you know what? That is part of my story. These are the stories that have formed me and that shape the way I see the world and that people rely on. So we use often, like in a foundation, in a leadership development experience for anyone at any level, kind of how do you craft that? How do you tell the story of who you are as a creator or as a hero or as an explorer? Because those might be different words, they might be different images, they might be different bylines on your LinkedIn profile or your About Us page or your speaker profile. So archetypes provide a language for helping us figure out how to tell our own stories in a personal brand.
Right. And I think that a key idea that's really important to recognize is, while that has always been true, it has grown in importance at the organizational level, because all of those footprints that are out there with each employee having a presence and a face online and being tied back to and recognized as a part of your organization means that the little personal brands of all of the employees, they're like your ambassadors out there. It's the most important things that you've got as an organization that shows what you care about and the quality and caliber of the people that are a part of your team, that are standing behind the promises that you make it as an organization. So the quality of the personal brand of those leaders and the people on your teams is a direct reflection on the organization as well. So it's really important that you're paying attention to the way that people are expressing that personal brand.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So that's one personal brand, but then there's a number of other, maybe again, let's talk about kind of that entry level leader. And we know that if we've picked out someone as a high potential person for leadership and we want to mentor and grow them, a lot of times we need some kind of professional development aspect, right? Like where do we, as we said earlier, where do we want to go? What are the things that Cynthia is good at already, and where is her growing edge? And we can do that with archetypes as well, because in the story pattern, I know kind of the strengths that I own, but I also know the things that tend to get in my way of successful relationships, of successful execution on projects, of successfully teaming, of successfully leading. So I'll use my pattern as an example. Creator being the top one, and creator, like, great brainstormer, loves to make things, very imaginative, likes to execute at a level of detail. But the creator pattern also hates to finish, right? Likes to start a lot of things, but doesn't like to let them go because I'm not done yet. And so I know that tendency on my part to not let go and call something complete can be an area of growth for me in a professional development plan.
Right. And that's just one little example. I'll toss a few other developmental opportunities. We like to call that the activation phase. So as we mentioned before, you measure and then validate your profile. And in the activation phase, there are many ways that you can continue to dive in, both for forward thinking progress, as well as when I'm stuck. So when I'm in a challenging place, maybe there's a conflict I find myself in, and I have the ability to pause and step back and recognize, or even ask myself questions around, why am I experiencing this challenge? Is it because I'm overexpressing an aspect of a strength of my pattern? Is it because I bumped into someone else who has a pattern that rubs me the wrong way? And, just stepping back and asking, what is actually happening in this situation? So we look at it from strength to strength, strength to shadow, and shadow to shadow in terms of how am I showing up in relationship. And I think relationship is ties into another component of leadership development. So the ability to manage effectively my own responses. So that's my personal growth in relationship, because I rarely get to sit around and just work by myself. I need to collaborate. I need to build relationship, both with direct reports, people that I'm managing up to, and that's part of my own success. So number of tools available within the construct to activate on personal growth and personal development.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see the different ways that that's being brought forward.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons people really appreciate archetype as a mechanism for development is because it makes things so tangible. I can finally understand if I did a 360 and someone said, Cynthia needs to grow in this area. I need a way of the point A to point B, right? I need the framework to understand, oh, why am I showing up that way? And how would I even shift showing up that way? But there's this real tangibility in having a framework that people can see themselves, and they can see the patterns in a very tangible way. So.
Yeah, and I think that a key to all of this is allowing yourself to stay vulnerable enough to receive feedback from other people, and to develop a way to give yourself that feedback. So within the tool set at CultureTalk, so many resources are available to help you self-evaluate. Oops, I did it again. And to make simple commitments, right? The ability to set goals and simple commitments that help you to move the needle and actually act from the feedback that you're receiving, which makes all the difference in the world, because all the potential leaders with all their great potential who never act on that potential will not grow and will not become effective organizational leaders. So you're looking for those people who can actually be vulnerable enough and self-motivated enough to actually activate and use the information that they're learning through and that they're given. So that's an important opportunity with Archetype, is the ability to, self-develop and remain in a safe and vulnerable place to make change.
Okay, so let's now assume that someone has been a leader for a bit of time, and now they are moving into a more, a higher level, more responsibility, maybe more responsibility for specific functions, more responsibility in terms of a bigger team. Teresa, how would we continue down this road? Down this road of leadership.
Right. Okay, so we've worked on relationship building and some communication skills. I think problem solving and also being able to negotiate conflict are some higher level skills. So how do I use the opportunity to either end a conflict that I myself am in, or maybe people that I'm managing are in? And to do that, I think it's helpful to be able to deconstruct stories. So if we can look at what's happened or what's happening and use the framework of Archetype to label and deconstruct it, that starts to take the onus away from finger pointing, from here's the problem, it's this person, to here's the problem, it's this pattern that's on repeat. It's this behavior that we can isolate and identify. And it's this aspect that needs to shift or change, and we can make a simple plan around how to do that. And so I think that problem solving and conflict resolution are the sort of next level areas of leadership development, and a number of different opportunities that we can sort of take a step back and apply the framework there too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how, we come to any situation kind of seeing the world the way we see it through our own patterns. Lawrence Knott, one of our partners, called it our prism, right? Like the way we reflect into the world is so informed by our own patterns, but that can also become a prison, if you will, right? Now we're locked into a particular point of view. And one of the things I love the most about the problem solving is that a leader can literally go, okay, this is how I see the world, my vantage point. What am I missing? What are all the different prisms? What are all of the different people on my team wired to notice that I'm not even wired? Because we're all, we can't be everything, right? So, I think that problem solving piece is so key, because what it opens somebody up to is that there's many different aspects that need to be taken into account. Are our caregivers, are looking at, are everyone's needs met? Our explorers are looking at, is there a new way to push the envelope? Are there new ideas out there that we're not considering? Our sage is asking the tough questions that, we have to slow down to answer. Our hero is driving us, and so all those different people add something, and a really, a level of leadership that recognizes I need all of this.
Right. That diversity of thought, diversity of approach. Really important aspect of diversity to think about and to consider. And I love one tool that we have called the Culture Conversations game, that in a lighthearted way engages people in a step back, enabling them to role play a response that isn't natural to them. And what I see happening when we use that game is the ability of a number of different people on a team to recognize very quickly in the moment, there are so many perspectives and so many ways to respond to a problem or to respond to a challenge, that we have a whole, cadre of potential right answers at our fingertips if we're able to get out of our own way, if we're able to get past those blind spots and, engage the team in the exercise. And so that tool in and of itself, within 30 minutes, you can start to break down some of the walls that go up when a conflict arises.
And I think as we've done that kind of activity with groups in development work, that it's amazing. My eyes are always open, like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right.
I just like, oh yeah, that idea is valid too. And so we begin to gain some respect for each other and for all of these different valid points of view, which goes a long way back to the conflict resolution. I'm thinking about some people that we know have worked with this system where there were two leaders that butt heads a lot, right? And they have been able to take this framework and really use it to have one of those safe but brave conversations about how I'm experiencing this, how you're experiencing it, and how do we stay open to your point is, I see the validity of your point, and so forth. So
Yeah. So let's go up a level still. Now let's go to the senior leadership in an organization. And those people who are responsible for managing maybe big things like change initiatives or the culture itself. And how do we take this same language and framework that the people in the organization have adopted and started to learn and apply it to some of those really bigger initiatives? So I'll just talk a little bit about the ability to measure the organizational culture using the same 12 archetype patterns. And I think that's an important key when it comes to the sustainability of a program. So if we have a single framework with a single language and we've already adopted it and we're speaking it to each other through the other activities that we've been talking about, it's much easier to then think about managing a larger initiative because everyone's already on board, their ear's been trained, they have an understanding of what these patterns are. So if we need to make a big shift in our culture, then we can break it down using the framework that we've learned, potentially going from the shadow sides of a particular pattern to the strengths, or creating a plan to shift in response to maybe outside influences, crises, changes in the market conditions that we're experiencing. Anytime we need to get to a new place, on our roadmap, it's great to have that measure of where is our organizational culture today? What is that point A? I thought you were going to say something.
Agreeing, I think that, we have to know our starting place. All change, we have to be going from some place to some other place. And so as you are saying, now we can measure, we've measured our own patterns as individual leaders. Now we're measuring a shared cultural experience, which is, it's not a +1 +1 +1. It's more like chemistry, as I know you like to say, right? That shared experience is something. And now we can be looking at where does that shared experience need to go in response to changes in the market, changes in our business, et cetera. How do we get to the next level in our business? And I also have my own patterns as a leader. So I can plug into like, what's my responsibility for this? Where do I contribute? And how do I literally, consciously, intentionally manage myself as a leader in order to take this culture
where it wants to go? Yeah. And how do we get the right people on the bus in the right roles so that we can make that shift, recognizing that I can manage and lead to people's strengths,
right.
And avoid some of those blind spots.
Yeah. Get them engaged, get them excited, get them motivated.
Right.
There's a lot of the subtle people work, right? That we can utilize story as a way to tap into that and move people forward around a strategy.
Absolutely. So we have an opportunity coming up to play with and practice some of these ideas. And Cynthia and I are looking forward to an event that we're putting on August 23rd. It's called Two Sides of the Culture Equation. And we've talked a little bit about both of those sides today, and we think that both of them are really an important component of the leadership development process. So if you're interested in taking this a little bit further and you're intrigued to practice a little bit with this work,
play with it, have an experience, get yourself into what are my patterns and how does this impact me, right?
yeah, we'd invite you to request an invitation to join us on August 23rd. We'll be having 2 sessions, but they will be small. They'll be intimate, and it's by invite only. So if you would like to join us, please look in the link below. We'll post it when we're done with this recording, and consider joining us to kind of try this stuff on for yourself. And that's a lead up to our next certification, which is coming in September. So September is a great time of year to kick off something new. And we will be starting our next 8-week cohorts on September 6th. So if you're interested in applying these principles, if you're developing a leadership program right now and you would like to apply what you're hearing here into your program, we encourage you to consider the certification cohort. So we're available for a one-on-one call, give you a chance to take the Culture Talk for Individuals assessment so you can feel how that aligns for you, and we'd love to connect with you. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll hope to hear from you and talk to you again soon. Have a good week.
Bye.